Drop it.
Alright everybody, we are back with Dark Souls 3, and I know it's been a while. I haven't forgotten about you guys, and I do apologize for the hiatus or the delay, but I actually got promoted at my job, not really unexpectedly, but the timing was kind of unexpected, and as a result I've had to put in a lot of extra time to learn the new position. It is a management position, which is awesome. It allows me to have a lot more free time, because before I used to train classes and I would have to always adapt my schedule, you know, a couple weeks working this time frame to train this class, and then a couple weeks working a different time frame to train a different class. But now I'm on a standard 9 to 5, and I should be making content again, just like I promised earlier, more regularly. As well, I've retired Pokemon Go, so that's not even a factor anymore. But we will be getting back to Dark Souls, and hopefully making content daily once again. Hopefully I'm actually going to stay to that. But on to today's video. It's something that I promised for a while. It's going to be taking a look at the Astora's Greatsword. This is one of the weapons that a lot of you wanted me to look at. A lot of you consider this, and a lot of other people consider this to be one of the best Ultra Greatswords, if not the best version of an Ultra Greatsword in the game, which can definitely reign true if you're considering it from a versatility standpoint, because it can be used in so many different builds. Obviously, it's going to be the best Greatsword choice, or the best Ultra Greatsword choice for something like a Hex build or a Mage build, which I have outlined in the past. I've talked about you can still utilize heavier weapons like these because of their low stat requirements and they're very lightweight in those kind of builds. So you're not completely deprived of using weapons that have really good hyper armor attributes or stuff like that, like the Ultra class of weapons in this game. Now, nonetheless, we're mainly going to be approaching this from a quality build standpoint. This weapon is very good because it does deal pure physical. It is lightweight, allowing you to wear heavier armor or have a pretty decent weapon like a straight sword or something in your offhand, or you know, whatever it is that you want, because it is so light. So it does have those things going for it for sure, but its moveset is also one of the most unique in the game. Its charged R2 attack is the standard thrust, and if you watch any of my videos, you know that I don't really utilize R2 attacks all that much for most weapons, because most of them aren't good. I'm a fan of speed over damage personally, and faster weapons with the faster R1 attacks, especially because they combo and end up doing more damage anyways, are easier to catch opponents with, and they're more effective. Now, in comparison to R2 attacks, that's not to say that R2 attacks aren't useless, aren't useful. They are not useless. That's what I meant to say. The Ultra Greatsword version that has the charged R2 is actually very useful, because you can use that as a tool to kind of really control the space in front of you and, you know, kind of make the opponent kind of doubt their attack. If they're running in at you, or if they're trying to hit you on the edge of their weapon's hitbox, for example, spears or running R1 attack from a katana is really popular for doing that. You know, if you watch my katana gameplay, for example, you know that I run in for a poke and then I roll away really quickly. If you can time a charged R2 in order to hit the enemy as they're attacking you, even if they're at their maximum range, because I've talked about this in other videos where I analyze stuff like glaives and stuff like that, the actual R1 motion of the attack puts an enemy forward a few steps. So it actually moves the enemy towards you, and that's how they can hit you from max distance, which is very effective, because as a result of that, sometimes your weapon won't reach them and especially if they're using stuff like a spear, and then you stagger your opponent and then they can roll away. That's what I do with the katana, right? That's why it's so effective. However, if you can actually space out an R2 attack, this is again going back to the trading mentality from Ultra Great Swords that I discussed a long time ago. You can space properly where an enemy will end up coming into your hitbox range, trying to hit their weapon in on you, and then you'll obviously out damage your opponent because you're using the higher damage output weapon. Again, forcing the trade, or even if the enemy misses and ends up coming into your hitbox, you're going to deal a lot more damage. So it is very, very effective for that. The standard R1, probably, in my opinion, the best version of an R1 for an Ultra Great Sword. I am a fan of the diagonal swing. I know some people like the the vertical swing from like a Great Sword, the Ultra Great Sword, like the Berserker Ultra Great Sword, the Giant Sword, or the Fume Ultra Great Sword, for example. I'm not a fan of those vertical swings just because they sometimes don't track that well, and if an enemy's coming at you from an angle or rolling around you, you're dependent upon this weapon hitting in one vertical line, whereas with these weapons, because they have that diagonal kind of downward swing, it's a lot easier to catch enemies coming at you from an angle or rolling around you, and you can really roll punish a lot of people with an Ultra Greatsword, which if you do get the roll punish, you're going to hit them for a 2-hit combo, which is usually going to do around 800 to 1,000 or more points of damage, which is really, really nice. Finally, the weapon art with this weapon is one of the most uniques for an Ultra Greatsword in particular. I'm personally not the biggest fan of it. It's not really as useful in duels because if enemies are strafing left and right, you're not going to end up comboing them. It's more useful for invasions where enemies like to run and heal, but it still has its uses in duels. It's just not as useful in my opinion because, again, the tracking and the stagger doesn't necessarily hit the enemies for all the hits. But it has its kind of thrusting spear weapon art where you can follow it up with an R2 to deal an extra amount of damage and gain some extra distance. But as you can see there, the tracking on it can be a little wonky, especially if an enemy is strafing or just dodging. With a duel, enemies are only fixated on you. It's not like an invasion where they're paying attention to a few different things sometimes. So take it with a grain of salt. Don't really spam it out. I personally like to stomp a little bit more for reasons that I explained in my Lothric analysis, but that's just me. Now, where this weapon obviously shines is going for the trades. When an enemy comes in on you trying to land a combo or something, if they're using a lighter weapon, if you're already initiating your attack, as you can see there, you're going to out-damage them. And I don't really understand, I guess I do understand to an extent, why my washing pole video got a lot of hate. I was expecting it, hence the thumbnail where it said ready for the hate. But as you can see in these videos where people use katanas against me, it's very easy. Here again, it's very easy to counter a running R1. Just like I don't understand why people got so butthurt over Farron Greatsword's L1. It's not hard to beat. Just because it's seemingly cheap or it's fast or it's effective because it covers a large arc in terms of the L1 from the Farron Greatsword, or because the katana can run in and hit you so quickly, you can counter it. It's more the playstyle and the opponent that's utilizing an effective tactic rather than the weapon. Don't get me wrong, katanas are still, in my opinion, one of the best weapons in the game, but as you can see, using an Ultra Greatsword, all it takes is just you understanding your opponent's playstyle and then reacting to it. Even if you approach your opponent, if you're rushing a katana user down, if you see them starting up their standard R1 attacks, if you start up yours as they're starting up theirs or just before they start theirs, your hyper armor frames are going to combo them out of their attack, or you're going to trade for one of their hits for 2 of yours and out damage them anyways. It's just insane. So it's more the tactics that you utilize with weapon to weapon rather than the weapon itself that's really cheap. So I mean, take it with a grain of salt. That's all I'm saying. And I know a lot of people wouldn't understand what I was trying to explain, or maybe they just have their own opinion of it and they don't believe me. That's fine. I mean, that's just my personal opinion on the weapon class and the way that spacing works in the game. But with any weapon, just like I explained with this R2 thrust from the Astora's Greatsword, it's mainly a spacing tool. That's why it's so useful. Now, the final thing that I want to discuss with this weapon is its rolling R1. As you can see there, it is extremely effective at one thing in particular, and that is playing defensive. When you're trying to roll away from an opponent, the vertical tracking of that downward swing, because an enemy is usually approaching you in a straight line. They're not strafing back and forth as they're approaching you, right? They obviously have to come from one specific line. That is where the vertical tracking of an Ultra Greatsword can definitely come in handy and track an opponent down. So when you're rolling back from an opponent, if you've hit them twice and then you're rolling back, or they're just being overly aggressive on you, if you roll back, enemies don't usually consider themselves or consider you to be able to hit them as you're rolling back. They think that they're going to come in and punish your roll. So because the rolling attacks still have hyper armor, you're again going to come out on top with trades usually. But that is the video, guys. Let me know what you think. We are back, hopefully for real this time. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Check out the channel for more Dark Souls content, and subscribe if you like the content as well. Thank you again, guys. Quantum is out.